Welcome to Innovation Illuminated, a podcast where guest entrepreneurs and experts in their field of business share their experiences and knowledge learned through their journey in the business world. I am your host, Hunter Purok, and similar to these guests, I am also an entrepreneur. Today's guest is Tyler Vandermolen. This is part one of a two-part series that Tyler and I will be doing on real estate. In part one, we discuss Tyler's journey as a real estate agent. We discuss how to get your real estate license, all the way to choosing a brokerage to work for. We also talk about lots of his experiences through choosing a lending officer, recommending title companies, everything that a real estate agent has to do that I did not know about. We also talk about closing costs, commissions, who's getting paid for what, and who pays for what. So we talk about how the person that's actually selling the house is paying for all of the expenses, whereas the person that's buying the house isn't paying for any of those. I did not know this, and I learned a lot through this podcast as Tyler talks through all of his experiences with selling homes and learning from all these webinars and from getting mentored at Exit Realty. I hope you enjoy this podcast, and in part two, me and Tyler will be talking about real estate and investments. Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Illuminated. All right, welcome back, Tyler.
It's good to see you again, Hunter.
Part two.
Last one was really interesting, really good content. So now we'll build on another topic.
All right, let's talk about real estate this time since we did lawn mowing and Dairyland property management last time. So let's talk a little bit about real estate. I want to start out asking why you chose to get your real estate license with everything else that you had going on. I know you got the lawn care business, just coming out of school and whatnot, and you've got so much going on. I know, like myself,
right?
Business-wise, why did you choose to get your real estate license?
Yeah, it's kind of like with you and your other businesses and just getting creative. Sometimes it's not enough, so you kind of look to yourself at what's the next challenge. And I'd say, through my creativity and through that entrepreneurial journey, once you take that first step, kind of get hooked on that, and that becomes your identity and what you have passion in. So then just one business isn't enough for some people, but for me, I've always wanted to progress, meaning like if I feel like I'm getting good at one thing, let's find a new challenge and let's grow on that. So I got into real estate as a kid. I was always interested in it, watching my dad do projects around the house, and we come from a really resourceful family. My grandpa was a carpenter and had his own carpentry business and construction. It's called Vandermolen Construction. So all that was just in the bloodline and passed down. So I was really interested in those projects and watching my dad do that and helping. Then I loved the HGTV channel.
Of course, yeah.
That was a sweet channel. You had Flip or Flop. You had the Property Brothers, and so much good content on there. I grew up watching a lot of that stuff. So I was always interested overall in the real estate realm. I even remember kind of growing up, I would send my mom or dad, I would send them listings of houses I liked. I was like, hey, this one's kind of cool.
Yeah.
We didn't need to move or anything, but
it's just fun to look
fun to look at. Yeah.
So what got you into getting your license then?
Yeah, so around the time where I was kind of starting my entrepreneurial journey with building my company, as we spoke about in the last podcast, I was also looking on LinkedIn for other jobs too, kind of in the whole process of like when I started that company and figuring out what was next. And I discovered that it was COVID, so there wasn't a really good job market. It wasn't a lot out there. It was pretty tough to find quality positions. So I found myself interested in a real estate advertisement with Century 21, and it was titled for people that are entrepreneurial minded and self-employment, kind of do your own thing, your own schedule, which once again interests me because that's kind of how my thinking had shifted.
Yeah, totally.
So I got a hold of that, and I was like, while I'm starting a company and taking this risk, let's take another one. Let's try this too. Yeah. So I just kind of dove into that or responded to that, talked to the recruiter, and they kind of alerted me to the process of how to become a realtor. Once again, you got to take state exams, study for that. So I got onto that trajectory basically at the same time.
Okay.
So kind of filled my basket with a bunch of different things and hoped that the Easter Bunny was coming. But
I like that.
yeah, so I got hooked up with them and started studying for the license, and I was kind of studying while running the business.
Okay.
I took the state exam. I believe it was in 2021 in June is when I took that.
Okay. Let's take a step back. So is
Yeah.
it just one state exam
It's
that you have to get?
one exam, but it's very comprehensive, and it's more than what meets the eye. A lot of people think that real estate sales, being a real estate agent, is posting some pictures online and writing a bio and getting a commission check. It's far deeper than that. So there's there's a big legal side to the business, and compliance is huge, and you're protecting your client's best interest legally and personally. So that exam really highlights all the different documents and forms that we use, which are legal documents, and we do a lot with that, and advocating for people to fill them out the correct way, making sure they're informed. So that test was focused on all of that in general, and then also a lot of other kind of components of real estate on just vocabulary, stuff like that. I don't remember super in depth of what all was in there, but I just remember a lot of emphasis on the law and a lot of emphasis on those documents.
Okay. And was it more mostly self-learning that you had to do, or was there classes that you took?
Good question. So the cool thing about it, I took it through the WRA, so we could probably link that in the description for other people that might be interested in obtaining their license. But what I liked about the WRA is that it was not associated with a college. It's its own organization. And they had modules, so you would study and watch videos and read, and then you would take chapter exams. So you would get through all these chapter exams, and then you had a just an entire examination, a practice examination of all the material. And once you completed that course certificate, you were eligible to take the actual exam.
Gotcha. Okay. So it was like a warm-up or practice exam for the real thing.
Definitely. Yeah. And that was just the way that they kind of scheduled and flowed that education.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
For the real exam, was it taken like on some certain site, or was it just
at
online?
A site.
Okay.
You could do it online, but proctored, or on site with a proctor, of course. So it's a real deal test. I believe I was in there for over 3 hours for that test. And people compare it to the likes of, I don't want to offend anybody in the audience, but it's up there with the MCAT and life and health insurance and a lot of those professional examinations. It's up there with that kind of stuff. The bar, probably not quite to that level.
Yeah.
Probably not quite to like the CPA level, but it is a difficult test. Most people do not pass the first time.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of preparation to pass that exam.
Gotcha. Did you pass the first time?
I did.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was very shocked by that because, like I said, I was, deep in my own business at the time, and I think it took a week off to kind of cram and study for it.
Yeah.
So I didn't do any applications for like a week and just studied. I've always been like a visual studier, so I have to, even if the material's on the computer screen, I do best when I write the material down, and that's how it links to my brain, and I can memorize better that way. So I pretty much wrote out the whole course, studied it, memorized it, and took the exam. I was surprised to pass the first time because I was told not a lot of people do. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Awesome. There's something to what you said with visual learning, with writing it down. I feel like I learn a lot better or remember stuff for sure if you write it down.
Yeah, right. I think that's a big business lesson outside of just real estate, but as an entrepreneur or even a successful occupation, is that you should be structured and write things down and have a calendar and know what's going on when is what it takes to be successful.
Totally. Yeah. Laying out your schedule. I even like to put like timestamps on stuff. Like I'll say, I'm going to be doing this for 15 minutes, then I'm going to do this for 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's great.
Even if there's not even like a set time, like say I wake up, I'm going to walk around for 15 minutes, then I'm going to eat for 20 minutes. And then I like to keep to that schedule and like keep checking the time. Oh, I'm on schedule. Keep going.
Right.
I feel like
you structure.
Yeah, you can accomplish so much more. I feel like when I do that, I get everything I want done before I could even eat breakfast, maybe at 11. It's
Right.
crazy because you
Yeah.
get so much done. You have it laid out perfectly and you
Right.
just execute.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yep.
That was a little sidetrack.
Little sidetrack, but it's a good piece
lesson.
in business, and this is all about growing businesses. So, real estate, being an agent or an investor, any part of the business is just another form of self-employment and growing a business.
For sure. Let's talk about brokerages now. I know there's a
Yeah.
numerous amount of them. You started with Century 21. Like you said, you saw the ad,
Right.
but there's Exit Realty, Shore
Yeah.
West, etc. In your experience, what factors come into consideration when choosing a brokerage firm?
That's a great question, and I would advise the audience, anybody interested in obtaining their real estate license, to really carefully investigate each different brokerage and almost interview the brokerage. So don't just walk into a brokerage and sign up without understanding what they provide to you. That's the mistake that I made because, I had seen that ad. And I thought because I was talking to Century 21, that meant that I had to contract with them. But that wasn't necessarily true. That, once you obtain that license, you can go anywhere you want. They don't own you. There's no contract until you contract with one of the brokerages. So I contracted with Century 21. I'm a loyal guy. They found me. They put me through the process, and so I started with them. And with that experience, once again, this was all COVID time, and a lot of people were working from home again. So you're trying to learn as the new guy on the block, and you need mentorship, and you need other successful agents around you that are willing to share what they know and kind of promote your knowledge and growth. So at that particular arrangement, there was just nobody there. Nobody worked from the office. The broker was there, but it's a little different working with a broker than working with the agent sometimes. So I was at Century 21 for an entire year. I didn't do any transactions at Century 21 at all. I don't even really feel like I learned anything at all there.
wow.
I did some of their online webinars. I did some of their in-person meetings. And to me, it just felt like in that particular arrangement that the people that were succeeding were kind of closed door. So they were succeeding, but they didn't do a lot of translating that knowledge to other agents. It felt really cutthroat. And that, that's really how the real estate industry is. It's a pretty cutthroat industry. But personally, I believe a successful brokerage has a team of agents that are working together, because if you understand that there are endless leads out there, there's always another house that's going to be sold, and there's always another person that wants to buy a house, and you can't possibly help or know everybody in this world, then why wouldn't you want to see your other team members grow?
Yeah, totally. And
So
yeah, there's nothing you get out of not spreading it.
no,
Your knowledge, because there's, like you said, there's so many clients. Same with lawn mowing. There's so many clients
people
that you
Right.
can get, that why not spread your knowledge to help somebody out and let them learn so then they can become successful too.
Yeah, and then they're following your protege, and you're influencing like the quality of what's going on. If we're referencing mowing, if you're teaching somebody or referring somebody and showing them how you do it, all that's going to do is just provide a happy customer. Or like when I know I don't mow in this area and I send it to you, I know they're going to be taken care of because I know the integrity of you and the quality of your work, and vice versa when you send leads to me for fertilizing and weed control. We just know what the result's going to be. So I would compare that, transition that back to real estate. If you're teaching an agent how to be successful, and there's a place or a corner of the world, in parentheses, that you can't reach but they can, you're impacting the world in a positive way, because now they're going to do a great job because of your help.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm not trying to bash Century 21, but
no, we're not in any way. Yeah.
You'd think that they'd want to have a good reputation with spreading knowledge of agents to help other agents that are just coming up like yourself.
Right.
To expand the knowledge of the whole firm itself.
Right. Yeah, and we're not bashing them in any way, and that's just one specific branch and how that branch was operated. And the culture is a huge thing, the culture of the agents that were there. So that's a franchise. They're all over the country. They might be international. So we can't categorize the whole company like that, but this was just in that specific space.
Mm-hmm.
So I put in a year there, didn't really learn much, didn't do anything, didn't even come close to having a first transaction. It was almost just kind of something that I had that I didn't use.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really focused on the other business anyways. But if we fast forward that winter, so that was my first winter off after finishing a successful first year with Dairyland Property Management. I went down to Florida. And it's funny how this works. That's why it's a small world. But I went down with one of my best friends, Brad, and we went down to visit his dad's best friend. So it's like his dad's best friend and my best friend, and it just all worked. We had a great time down in Florida. So we went to visit them, and if this makes sense, but his dad's best friend, his wife, was a realtor.
Okay.
And she was at Exit down in Florida. And they have ties to Wisconsin, so they were here for most of their lives. And, I was just explaining this to her about my company and being a year through that and having the real estate license, but really not progressing at all. And she looked at me in disbelief and said, you're 19, 20 years old and you've got a successful company, but you don't have any success in real estate. How is that possible? Are you contacting these people and letting them know that you're a realtor? Are you following kind of the formulas that it takes to be successful in real estate? And I said, no, I really haven't been taught any of that. I know that's a bad excuse because I should have taught myself. But, referencing our prior podcast, I was giving so much credit to learning from a system, taking what's good and taking what's bad, and knowing what you would not want to do and what you do like, putting that together and then doing your own thing. Because I think a lot of the times it really starts with you're learning from somebody else and then the development comes after.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair to say that a new realtor should just teach themselves the game. That's not possible. You need to have somebody that'll intervene and kind of mentor you through that.
Okay. And so this Brad's dad's wife, is that who it is?
It's Brad's dad's best friend's wife.
Okay.
Does that
So
make
she,
sense?
yes.
Yeah.
So she was at Exit Realty, which is another firm similar to Century 20.
Yeah, same thing, really similar franchise all over the country, might be international, but just they're all a little bit different, right?
Okay.
And then you've got your Shore West and you've got other agencies that are just local to Wisconsin. And then you've got your franchises, which are global or whatever. So she had recommended Exit Realty, and she did so because she really believed in their training. And she said, you're going to get the greatest training here. And they've got the programs, and they've got the mentorship and the culture. Another cool thing about Exit Realty is that you can sponsor agents. They created that system to prompt successful realtors to translate their knowledge. So you could find a new agent, sponsor them, and be responsible for their learning. And then when they do transactions, you would actually get 10% of each of those transactions from corporate. So it's not even taking money away from the person you're training or the trainee.
The mentee, yeah.
The mentee, you're taking...
That's a word.
I think it's a word. Trainee or mentee, same thing. But actually, the corporation, Exit Realty, is rewarding you for training and for developing their agents.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a great system. If I take lessons from real estate, just like in the previous podcast, I did a lot of kind of like, this is the lesson I took. And pointing those out to the audience, that's the lesson I took from Exit. If you were ever to own a brokerage, you want your agents to learn from each other and to grow. Mm-hmm. So if you can prompt them to do that financially, that's the best way to do it.
Right.
So she pointed me in that direction, and I was so sure about Exit Realty that when I came back from Florida, I got off the plane and I drove right there.
Really?
I went right in, met the brokers there in Germantown at the time, loved what I heard, and I thought to myself, actually called my dad after meeting with them, and I asked him, do you think I should do this? Should I switch over to this other company? And he said, what do you have to lose? You haven't done any transactions with the other company. So it's either now or never, son. That's pretty much what he said. And I agreed with him, hung up the phone and signed the paperwork. And, I had to pay their franchise fee and everything to get switched over to them. But that was a great decision as far as my growth and learning went.
Okay. And let me remind the listener, this is all because of Brad's dad's best friend's wife.
It's interesting, right? Yeah. Brad's dad's best friend's wife.
That's it.
All of this finding Exit is all because of her.
Wow. What a woman.
What a woman, and what a coincidence that
Real.
a best friend in one generation can help a best friend in another generation.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So cool.
So
right?
what were the transfer fees and stuff associated with like transferring from Century 21 to Exit?
Yeah, so you actually don't pay Century 21, or let's just call it brokerage X, right? You know, so if you leave brokerage X for brokerage Y, there's no fee to the brokerage X, to the original brokerage.
Okay.
But you lose whatever money you paid them. So usually there's a yearly fee to be a part of that corporation, and then there's a monthly fee for the MLS, which we'll get into, is the service, the multiple listing service, where the real estate is marketed for sale. And that's like the master system. So Zillow, Realtor.com, all those different aftermarket websites are just what I said. They're aftermarket. They're promoting. They're basically data companies. They're taking data from the MLS and making it, quote unquote, more user friendly for the folks that don't have the MLS or access to it. So ordinary people. So they're always going to be behind the actual MLS. The MLS is the real deal system.
I didn't know that.
So you're going to have your MLS fees, and then your E&O, which is like your insurance and protects you because there's a lot of liability in this. So you lose everything you invested in that original company, and essentially you'll have to pay a new franchise fee with Exit then, and then you got to pick up your insurance and your MLS fees with them, and there's other costs associated with it, but there's just one chunk up front, and then the rest of it's broken down over the months.
Okay. Do you mind sharing what one of those is?
Yeah, like what the costs are?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually like, there's also organizations. So like in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you've got the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors, GMAR, and you got to pay them about $1,000 a year just to operate your business as well. And they do a lot of oversight. So there's about $1,000 to them. It's a couple $100 to $1,000 to the brokerage. And then usually your MLS fees are a little over $40 a month, and your insurance might be around $40 to $50 a month. So your monthly costs are about $100 a month to operate the business. Could be a little more, could be a little less, depending on what that brokerage is offering. And then we'll probably touch on this later, but the way that the commissions are broken down, the brokerage will also take a percentage of the commissions too. Yeah,
we'll touch base on that later.
Sure.
But for now, let's talk about like how you actively prospect for clients, because I know that's one way that you can really differentiate. We're talking about this as a business, how one business could succeed as an agent and one could not fail. Succeed, because prospecting and getting clients is the name of the game. You need clients to sell houses.
Right.
So how do you actively prospect for clients?
Yeah, so this is a part of the reason why Exit is such a great formula, not only the mentorship and the sponsorship I told you about, but attending their seminars, and usually 2 meetings a month. And then they bring in all of these professionals that you learn from. So they'll bring in construction people, they'll bring in title people, lenders, and they give you all these preferred people that you will interact with in every transaction. Maybe not necessarily every transaction. Some of them, like title and lenders, are involved in every transaction almost. But then you've got specialists, like people that clean houses, people that do rodent removal or junk collection. They give you such a great web of experienced, knowledgeable professionals that allow you to build your business through that training. So they teach you the referral process of what Exit classifies as making touches. And no, we're not talking about touching people. We're talking about making a touch. And what that means to Exit and their formula is putting your face and your name in front of the people that know you. And that's how you're going to develop business. So You can get real creative with that, and it's different for every person. But making touches involves, for instance, if I was going to use you as an example.
Oh, you're going to be touching me?
I'm not going to
just
be
kidding.
touching you, Hunter, but I will be touching you. So essentially what I would do is come Christmas time, right? Maybe end of November, I'm going to mail you Christmas letter. And it might be as simple as Merry Christmas, Hunter. One of the things I was most thankful for this year was you. Happy New Year, best wishes. And then you're gonna attach your business card, your real estate business card in that. This could be anybody you know. This could be somebody but in our relationship who's in the mowing industry, in the landscaping industry, but I'm going to send him my real estate card. Then I could know people that are dentists. I could know people that are salesmen. Doesn't matter what they do, but you're going to put, or how you know them, but you're going to put that real estate information in front of them. So you're going to find a creative way. You're going to write a handwritten note. It's very personal, special. Send it out. Merry Christmas. That's one touch. Find another reason. Easter comes up. Shoot everybody you know a text. Happy Easter. Glory to God if they believe in God or whatever, or if you do. However you want to approach that situation, but you'll send them a text. Happy Easter. Tyler Vandermolen, Exit Realty. And you're just getting that name across the plate. You could be creative. You could pick up the phone. You could call people. Call somebody you haven't talked to in 3 months. Ask them how work's doing. How is their life doing? And then they'll ask about you. So you're not even over-influencing yourself. They asked you about you. So now you have an opportunity to say, well, yeah, you know what? I'm in real estate now. I help people buy and sell homes. So then you get a chance to put yourself in front of them. And then organically, in the future, they start to bring it up to you. Every time you talk to them or every time you converse with, oh, how's real estate going? Blah, blah, blah. And it starts to become associated with you. But in the phoning and the texting is a good opportunity then to ask for new prospects. Is there anybody you know that might be interested in buying or selling real estate if you're not personally interested? So it gives you an opportunity to prospect too.
Yeah.
So getting into the prospecting, they teach you the system of making those touches, and that allows you to get your name and face in front of people associated with being a realtor, and that's how you grow the business. That's one way of prospecting.
Yes, what I'm learning here is that you really attach yourself to being an agent.
Right.
So it's almost like a persona, or it's attached to you personally.
Yeah.
That everybody knows that you're an agent, and you need to gain the trust of people.
Right.
And also be a good, honest person that they trust and would possibly want to buy a house from.
Right. And this is crucial in the steps where you haven't done transactions yet, because every realtor starts out with 0 transactions. So you have to still portray and believe yourself to be an expert, and that comes from attending these meetings and from learning. You start to become an expert even though you haven't sat at the closing table and closed the deal yet. You are seeing yourself as a professional and portraying yourself that way. And most of the times, if you're able to confidently communicate that, people will see you as an expert. They don't even ask you, well, how many transactions have you done? I mean, you'll get that question, but you can honestly answer it and say, well, you know, I'm building my business. So far, I haven't had a transaction, but I'm actively growing this.
Right.
So people will see you as a professional. You'll go to social events and they'll bring it up without you even bringing it up if you're prospecting correctly. There's so many other different forms of prospecting. Once you start to do deals, you can send out postcards. You can knock on doors and just hand business cards out. Go knock on 15 doors. You're doing an open house. Go knock on 15 doors. Hand your card out. Hey, I'm selling the house down the road. Do you know anybody that's interested in buying this house? You know anybody that's interested in selling? You know, get a lead. So it just goes back to that door knocking and taking those extra moments to portray yourself. So there's a lot of different forms of prospecting. But
Gotcha.
it is the most important part to keep your business rolling. What Exit teaches you is that what you do today will affect you in 3 months. So if you're not prospecting today, in 3 months, you won't have any business.
Very interesting. Let's take a step back to the other agents
Right.
impact on you.
Yeah.
Did you have one of those mentors at Exit when you first joined?
Yeah, I mean, Exit just felt like a family. So when you introduce yourself and become a part of the Exit family, at least in this specific brokerage, it felt like a completely different vibe. It was a bunch of agents that were very friendly and were sharing information during these meetings. And you always have certain people that care a little bit more. You know, there's always some people that take things to the next level. So some people you'll get bits and pieces of information from them. Specifically at Exit, I loved how an agent by the name of Warren Cron has been in the profession for 25, 30 years, a career realtor. And he is the top dog there. And he was one of the most liberal with his information and willing to share what he knew and willing to take time out of his day to help you if you asked him. And I thought I was knocked back and so impressed by the top guy being willing to be the guy that's sharing information is rare.
Yeah.
So there were people like himself. There was another agent, Heather Nelson, who really took a big role in my development and took a responsibility on. She was just, and still is to this date, is just so good and talented with the legal side and the documents and being thorough and filling in the documents the correct way. And she is not afraid to tell you when you did something wrong because she wants you to learn. So that was a great influence. And she invited me to go on some showings with her and sit some open houses. And really, you should be asking the agents that are successful, let me sit your shittiest open house. Which one do you not care about? Or you've got something else going on and you need somebody to cover for you? I'm the guy. I'm going to take whatever you don't want. I'm going to do it. And that's how you start to learn and get experience. But yeah, that was just a great reference on the legal side. And then there were other people in between who, I also learned from.
What you talked about with joining the open house, I also talked about something similar with Dr. David Keeling, the dentist.
Right.
He's always open to letting someone come in and shadow him.
That's
because
awesome,
at
man.
some point
Yeah.
he was the person that
Wanted
wanted
to
to
shadow.
learn.
Yeah.
And he is in. I'm like him too, and I'm sure you are too, and a lot of
Right.
entrepreneurs are that want to share what they know because we don't get to talk about it with many people.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he says it's so fun. It's so fun for him to shadow and help spread his passion to young people that are also interested in doing it.
Right.
And like you said, it's so easy to do. You just go shadow an open house.
Yeah, it's so easy to do. It just takes commitment and action once again to just go do what you're supposed to do. But yeah, I'm thankful for the people that made it possible. And, those people will never be forgotten. And then you take pieces from them and you teach the next one up, what you learned from them. So it all spirals and it builds off of itself.
Yeah. So a takeaway for people that are young entrepreneurs is shadow people.
Shadow people, find mentors. You have to find mentors. It's going to be one of the most important things for your growth because you don't know it all. And somebody else that's been doing it for longer than you, they still don't know it all. But what they can teach you is invaluable. And in Exit specifically, the last thing I'll say about the brand, I'm raving about it, but I enjoyed my relationship with the broker there, and he, became a mentor not only in real estate but spiritually, and taught me a lot about God and stuff. He was very gifted with the Holy Spirit, and some of the things he taught me spiritually, like how to ask God for help and how to talk to God, to calm yourself before some of these meetings where you would go meet these people to list their house, and ask him to empower you to be the person that he is appointing to take care of these people. So he taught me so much about just personal growth and spirituality and masculinity and stuff like that as well. So this is like somebody I'm developing a friendship with more so than he's just my broker collecting part of my check,
Right. Yeah. So who is the broker? Can you explain that? I might be a little naive because I don't know much about real estate, but who is the broker?
Yeah. So the broker holds their broker's license. So the agents just hold the real estate salesperson license. So we need a procuring broker above us that oversees the transactions. And this is going to be somebody that's really experienced, typically has done sometimes hundreds or thousands of transactions. And you learn something new every transaction. Every transaction is different. There's always some sort of a complication or roadblock. There's never an easy transaction. So these people are responsible for not only, once again, the legal side and protection of the agents, but they are in charge of making sure that everything with the transaction goes smooth. So they're kind of the backroom person that is above you in your oversight. But they do a lot. I mean, they really do a lot they do recruiting and training, but you have to have somebody holding that broker's license in order to have a brokerage is what it's called.
Gotcha. So did they start out as an agent as well?
They all started out as agents too. So
Okay.
it's really cool how that works. These are just really successful agents that also, in many cases, have a gift for training and kind of growing and procuring agents into what they want them to be.
Gotcha. Okay, let's walk through a case scenario here.
Yeah.
I'm interested in buying a house. I come tour a house or come to a showing, you show me the house or whatever.
Right.
How are you going to follow up with me?
Yeah, so I mean, initially, if we knew each other, typically, either I reached out to you or you reached out to me, and I would do kind of what's like a fact-finding segment with you, whether that's on the phone or in person, kind of figure out what you're looking for. So how many bedrooms are you looking for? How many bathrooms, square footage? How many car garage? You want a 2-car garage, 3-car garage? Where do you want to be? Certain counties or areas within the county. So you're doing a lot of data collection at the front end. You're getting to know these people and what they really want. Then typically, like my broker now really pushes to get this thing called buyer agency, which is a contract between you and the buyer saying that I have the exclusive right to represent you. So that would protect myself as an agent and the brokerage, that I won't go show you a house and then you call the other agent and cut me out of the deal.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the process. But if you and I, after we did that fact finding and went and looked at some properties, maybe it was 5, maybe it was 10 with some people, maybe it's 40. Some people are very particular on what they want. Some people just want a couple walls and a roof.
Yeah.
So we looked at a house in Sussex together, and you decide that you love this house. So the next step for us would be we would sit down and we would write an offer. And let me just clarify that previous to us even looking at a house, I would have referred you to, or you would have your own, you would have a mortgage lender that would look at your financials and approve you for a certain amount that you can afford. So we would know the whole time when we're looking what you can and can't afford. And you would know what the interest rate is that we're targeting, and you would see the financial picture. So after all that's done, we looked at a house, you absolutely love it. We would sit down and write the offer. We go through all the documents necessary to do this, and we would submit that offer to the listing agent.
Okay. So listing agent could be yourself.
Yeah. So in some cases, like once this summer, I was the listing agent and the buyer's agent because I found the buyer myself. Now that's more of a rare instance, but in that instance, you can collect both ends of the commission. In our instance, let's just say Larry Smith is the agent at XYZ brokerage, and that's his listing. So he listed that property for sale, and I'm technically the selling agent or the buyer's agent, and I helped you find it, and then we work together as one party to get to the closing table.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I've never bought a house or been present at the sale of a house, so I'm not well versed in the upcoming topics.
And the verbiage, right?
Yeah, but could you please explain what a closing table is? We'll start with that.
Okay, so the closing table is going to be the final step of purchasing real estate. It's going to be the last thing that's done. So that's way at the end. So I'm going to start from the beginning first. So the first step obviously is obtaining the pre-approval letter, which tells you what you can afford and what the lender is willing to lend to you. Then it's writing the offer and getting acceptance. Acceptance is when all parties sign and agree to that contract. So if you offer to buy that house at $240,000 and the seller accepted and signed, that document would become a legal contract to sell that home. Oftentimes you'll see a little bit of back and forth before you get to an acceptance. So we might write an offer together, Hunter, and they might not necessarily like the price or certain contingencies. Contingencies are like home inspections or appraisals or testing. So those are all things that must be satisfied to the buyer's liking before the transaction can proceed. So oftentimes in a counter argument, it's not always about money, but it might be about contingencies. They're looking in a specific market like the market today. They might be looking for the least amount of contingencies as possible because then it's more guaranteed that that sale is going to go through. So you've got your pre-approval, you've got your offer. You might have to counter back and forth a little bit to really agree. Once everybody signs, that's acceptance. And then from there to closing, which is usually a 30-day window, all of these contingencies must be satisfied. So you might have a home inspection. Well, then you get a home inspector. He comes and does a home inspection, and he's looking for not only minor details, but major details. Is there mold? Does the roof need to be replaced? Is there water damage that wasn't seen when we went through the house in the showing? So that's meant to protect the buyers from buying something that they weren't aware of and inheriting a problem that should be fixed by the owner. So to elaborate, typically the owner or the seller of the real estate is responsible for the maintenance of the property. So certain things aren't included, like if they painted a room bad and you can see two different colors. Like that's not going to ruin a transaction, but hiding the fact that there was water damage or a roof that needs to be brand new and redone could be instances where a deal could fall apart. So you satisfy these contingencies, whether it's the home inspection or the appraisal, which oftentimes the bank will require in order to process that loan. They want to know that they're loaning you money for something that's actually worth that loan amount. So they're not going to get burned because it's a business for them. You have to proceed through all of these parts of this transaction before the closing table, and each one has a deadline.
Okay. And as the real estate agent, are you the one that's responsible for reaching out to those appraisers or people to satisfy those, or is it the seller's deed to reach out to somebody?
Really good question. So the agent in whole is really there to represent the buyer. So my job to you would be to make sure that we're hitting these deadlines and to make sure that I'm providing the resources to do so. So I might give you a list. I really like this guy, Mark Henry, with his inspection company, and that's an actual person. I couldn't remember his company, but there's so many of them out there, right?
Yeah.
And I might give you these names, and it's up to you on who you want to use. I can't dictate that, but oftentimes the buyer or the seller will just go with what the agent says because we're professionals in the space. So I'm going to provide you all of my resources. I've got a guy for everything you could think of. I got a guy, or I can find a guy if I don't. So I'm going to give you those names, and it'll be your responsibility to schedule them and pay for them and so on. If you waive, we're getting really in depth, but if you waive appraisal or something like that, the bank, it's all third party, so you don't get to choose your appraiser. And that's done so on purpose because of the 2008 collapse. That was all due to appraisers being buddy-buddy and kind of networking and giving people falsified values, and they thought they had all this equity in their house when they really didn't. So now the laws have changed. Appraisers kind of took the whip on the back with that. It's all third party, so you don't get to pick your appraiser, and you don't get to pick their price. You just got to pony up.
Gotcha. Is there networking events, or how do you find good lenders or not appraisers because you don't get to pick those, but is there a networking event that kind of like a job fair maybe that everybody's sitting at? Is that how it works?
Well, you can go to events like that. There's multiple, there's Milwaukee REIA, which is like a real estate investor group, and you can network, and all these things are completely up to the agent. Like, you need to be putting this work in to find these people. A lot of times it's referral based. So another agent will say, I've dealt with this person, I've had a really good experience. And then you'll give them a try and find out you either enjoy them or don't. And then, like I said, a lot of it is procured right through your meetings, and Exit or your brokerage will put these people in front of you, the people that they trust to do business with. So it's a really intertwined and full web when it comes to the real estate business, because there's so many people that touch the deal throughout the process. I think it's like a total of sometimes 20 to 30 different people are involved in that transaction, from the underwriters to the realtors to the inspectors to the processors to everybody that's involved. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So could we talk about, since you're saying that like that many people are involved, what's like a X-ray vision of like a closing deal?
Yeah.
Who's getting what?
Yeah.
Where's the money going?
Oh, sure. So I mentioned something about underwriters. I want to clarify that to the audience too before I get into that. But the underwriters, so a loan officer is like the face of the lender. So they're like the representative, like myself as an agent, who communicates directly with the buyer and the seller. But the underwriters are backroom guys that are really the ones evaluating the loan, and if it's a good loan, or they're trying to protect the lender from unnecessary risk. So when you get a glimpse at the closing table, after all these contingencies have been met, you've done the final walkthrough, you've done everything and satisfied everything that it takes to buy this house. Closing day is a day that you as the buyer are going to show up with that check. Earnest money is a good thing to cover. That would have been like early in the closing process, where you most likely would have put $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 earnest money up front that is held by the title company or the real estate agency, which basically puts skin in the game for you. So you're putting that earnest money down, basically vouching that you are serious about buying this house. Here's $5,000. Hold it. It's going to be rolled into the purchase, but it's going to be held by this title company or real estate agency, giving me skin in the game that I'm not messing with these people. I'm not contracting to buy a house that I'm going to back out on.
Okay.
So it gives you skin in the game, if that makes sense. So when you get to closing table, that money's been collected. You've satisfied all those contingencies. The way it's going to look is that for a seller, they're going to have the greatest expense when it comes to a real estate transaction. So the seller, the person that's selling their property, is actually paying the full percentage of commissions out of the equity of the house. So the buyer, as in you, Hunter, are actually paying me nothing. You don't give me a single dollar of your money. It's all coming out of the listing. And it works that way because you, as a young individual looking to purchase your first home, it would be difficult to ask of you to have money to put down on the house, earnest money, and to pay a realtor. That's a lot. That's a big responsibility for a first-time home buyer. You know, obviously somebody that's well into their career and has some money could afford to do so, but that's just the way that the system's designed. So the seller is going to pay the commissions for both the buying agent and the listing agent. Sometimes it's the same person. The seller is also going to be responsible for a lot of taxes, state transfer fees, deed fees. There's all these little fees and taxes coming from the government. You have no choice. There's going to be, all these different taxes. Then the title company takes a little piece. The lender takes a little piece of the deal, of the pie, and then the realtors take a piece of the pie. So the realtors take the biggest piece of the pie if we're looking at it in that dexterity. So usually the title fees are about 1% of the sale. I don't really know exactly what the lenders will pocket from it, but obviously they need to get paid too. It's probably pretty similar to the title. And then the standard transaction is usually 6%. Okay. So you're going to pay, the standard transaction would be 3.6% to the listing agent and 2.4% to the buying agent. That changes. It changes from every deal, and it's also changing because of a current lawsuit going on right now about realtor commissions. So that's 6. Let's just go simple with the 6%. If I helped you buy a home, I would collect 2.4%. So at that closing table, there would be a title settlement statement, and it shows the seller and buyer what all their credits and debits are, what you're responsible for paying, what you're credited. It even credits the buyer for like the taxes on the property when they didn't live there. So all of that legal stuff is taken care of at that table. It's really at the final moment where all this stuff is known about and presented to both parties, and they sign off making it official. And the buyer hands in that check, and the seller walks away with their check.
Okay.
And then the realtors and everybody gets paid out of that listing.
Gotcha. And is this done at like a location like your office or something?
Yeah, it could be done at the realtor's office, but typically these take place at the title company. So the title company really is kind of the hub for where these transactions are completed.
Okay, what is an example of one of those? I haven't heard of them.
So one that I use and I want to shout out is Land Trust Title. A lot of these title companies are located in our area, Brookfield, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Some of them Milwaukee, some of them Waukesha, but they usually try to stay centrally located. So Land Trust Title is an excellent company. I've used them on pretty much every transaction that I can. Sometimes buyers choose a different one, or sometimes the seller had a different one in mind. So, but anytime I can use them, I use Land Trust Title. Specific closer, Candace Liebner, is just amazing. Just does a very good job. She's very professional and great at explaining at the closing table exactly what you're looking at and what you're signing and what your fees are. Just a well-rounded professional.
Okay.
But yeah, so a lot of these closing sites are title companies. Land Trust Title would be an example of one of them, and they're located in Brookfield.
To dumb things down for myself and the listener.
Yeah.
So a real estate agent is kind of like a salesperson and marketer.
Yep.
That's what they're getting paid for. The loan officer is getting paid for providing the money.
Yeah, they're getting paid for orchestrating the loan.
Okay.
Right.
And then the title company, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, is the person that's filling out all the paperwork.
Yeah, they're the legal side. That would be a great way to kind of to dumb that down or simplify the whole process.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And like, why is it important to find a good lender?
Right.
What makes one bad versus one that's good?
Great question. So as far as the lending world goes, I've worked with this guy, I'll name drop Tony Trahan. He's at Pure Max Bank. And what I liked in him is I saw a lot of myself, and he's a very proficient, he's explanatory, he's proficient, he's professional, but he works after hours. So a lot of people in the professional world come in at 8 and they're done at 4, and they check out and they go home, and that's fine. But really successful people sometimes are the ones that are willing to pick up a phone call at 6 p.m. It might be about to sit down for dinner, but somebody calls them and says, hey, Tony, we just got an accepted offer. And he's willing to put himself out there and to have the responsibility of helping these people, and he just puts in the work. So I would say a good loan officer from a bad one, per se, and we don't want to really put anyone down, but a great loan officer is somebody that works beyond the expected hours and is always available for these buyers so that, they can help these people through this process. I would say if you wanted to categorize a bad one, it would be somebody that's not accessible. So I always recommend finding individuals that are willing to put in that extra work rather than somebody that just wants to clock in and out. And that goes for anything.
Yeah.
As far as a good title agent, somebody that's going to vouch for you. Like, for instance, I had a closing where, it actually was about to fall apart at the closing table. And she kind of just took over, and she told this other party, look, this is what you're agreeing to. It's too late to make these decisions now. You had the inspection contingency period where you could have done something about these things and you didn't. It's beyond that point. We're here at closing. We're going to close this deal. That's an all-star that kind of takes over, knows their role, and knows when to tell somebody no so that the deal can get done because the deal needs to get done. So is there anything else, I guess, there's so many people involved in touching these deals. Is there anything else that I should go into more detail about?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So we already went through commissions. We talked about percentage-wise what people get. We kind of walked through the whole start to finish realm of you start with an agent. They're kind of gonna want to recommend. They're gonna recommend people to
Yep.
you.
And you don't have to use them, but
Mhm.
oftentimes these are the people that are just great at what they do. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't you use them?
And the agents already work with them, so they're
Yeah.
comfortable.
There's a relationship there.
Correct. They're comfortable working together. I want to touch on, before we get into the last question that I have, what would be like the process? Would you come to, or would I come to an agent first if I was interested
Yeah.
in buying a house, or would I go to a lending officer first to see what my budget is?
Yeah.
What's the first
You
step?
could do it in a ton of different ways. So if you're interested in purchasing real estate, generally speaking, the first idea would be find out, what can I afford? So your first step could be finding a local lender first, or even talking to a banker where you bank. But like I said, the realtor might have one of those all-stars to provide to you that you might be better off finding the realtor first. You can approach it in any direction that you want. But typically you'll be best off using the professional references that other people have. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you're going to want to get a grasp of both. Yeah.
Okay.
But you could, Hunter, you could go to a lender, get a pre-approval letter, and then you could just be looking at properties on Zillow, see something for sale, and you could just pick up the phone and call that listing agent. But then you get what a lot of people don't realize about that. The reason for the buyer agent is because they work for you. They protect you. They watch out for your liability. So if you call the listing agent and you engage in a contract now where one person is advocating for both sides, it takes a lot of integrity to do that. And I learned that from the experience when I was able to do that, to represent both sides, because now that agent is in a contract and represents the seller. So the seller is their client and you as the buyer is a customer. So they don't have the same obligations to you as they do to the seller. They're really working for the seller and not for you. So people can get burned in that situation.
Right.
Because like I said, it takes integrity to hold that.
And you're still going to be paying that. If I'm correct, you'd still be paying the seller and the buyer agent no matter what, even if you're the person that just sees it on Zillow and reaches out, you're still going to pay.
Not as a buyer, you're not paying the commissions at all, remember. But
Right, okay.
But a lot of the times, a listing agent, if they're approached by a buyer and they represent the whole thing, to do a favor to the seller or to incentivize them to do so, they'll lower the overall commission. So they'll say, let's do this at 6%. But if I find the buyer, I'll do the whole thing for 4%.
I see.
And then that would give the seller a reason to maybe want to engage in something like that. But sometimes sellers want nothing to do with it. They want an outside agent because they want to know 100% that their listing agent is operating in their own best interest and not somebody else's.
Makes
so
sense.
there were times we could discuss some of my transactions this year.
Yeah, let's do some experience stories.
For sure. Where, when I was representing both sides, where I felt bad, but I really couldn't answer the question that the buyers were asking because that was not under my jurisdiction. I do want to touch on the commission. So let's just do the standard 6%. So let's say I'm the listing agent. You're the buyer's agent. So after the closing is done, all the paperwork signed, the title company collects the checks, and the transaction is officially closed. You don't just walk away from the table with that 3.6% in my experience, being the listing agent, right? So your brokerage collects that check first, and then your brokerage has a fee split with you. So sometimes it's a 60-40, 70-30 is what I have. It can go all the way up to a 90-10, or some really top dog agents have no split. They get all their commissions now. But they're, real experienced agents. So, the brokerage, so my brokerage would receive that check. Let's say it's $7,000, and they would take their 70%, and then they would take a transaction fee, usually like a regional development fee, and whatever other fees first. And then I would be left with the remainder of that check. So that's how it really breaks down from start to finish. You could sell a house for $300,000, and maybe the total commission for both sides was 15, 7 to me, and 7 to you, let's just say for 7.5 for me, 7.5 to you for simplicity. Then our brokerages would take their portions out first, and then we would be left with our check for our services as a realtor.
Okay. And can a broker sell houses as well?
Yeah, the broker can really do it all. The broker can have a bunch of agents under them, and then they can sell and do their own deals too, where they're taking 100%. So
Okay.
you really want to get to that broker status.
Yeah. What's the process? Do you know the process of getting there?
So that's no cupcake either. I looked into it a little bit, and to become a broker, you should refer to the legal hotlines and the WRA and the professionals that regulate this. But from my knowledge, you have to be in real estate for an X amount of years, and you have to average an X amount of transactions first before you're eligible. And then you would just study it the same way that you studied the real estate salesperson license.
Okay. I want to leave with one final question like we do with all the podcasts.
For sure.
What advice do you have for people that are starting out as realtors?
Yeah, so it's a really cutthroat, difficult, and tough business. And we'll cover in a different podcast the investment side of the business. And I've got mentors on that side too. But what they've always told me is, these guys have been in it their whole life. And the industry is sexy. It's flashy. Everybody wants to be and have a part and a piece of this business, especially when you've got HGTV and all these shows glorifying it, and they don't show the backroom side to it and the work that comes with it. So a lot of people are attracted to the profession, and you really have to be careful with just thinking that you can sign up and sell real estate, because it's far more complex. And, as I covered everything from start to close and all the legal side, I mean, it's real serious stuff. It's liability that you're carrying that is very serious. So there's a lot of work that's involved with it, and you really need to be good at prospecting. Without being good at prospecting and developing leads, there's no chance and no room for you to succeed. So I think being a realtor is more than just throwing on some lipstick and a nice shirt, or wearing a nice collared shirt and showing somebody a home. You need to be, once again, I refer to this in the last podcast, but a student of the game, find mentorship, understand how to prospect, but then dig deep. And, when I show people a home, I study the home before. I look at all the data and the MLS, and I know in my head the square footage, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the materials used to build it, everything. So when I show up to that house, it's like, previously I knew nothing about this house. This buyer maybe sent it to me, or I found it and sent it to them. But I walk in that door and it's like I've lived there my whole life. I know every fact about that house. And it starts with that. It starts with how you approach and how you provide value and information on any side of the transaction. On the listing side, it comes down to you're selling yourself, you're selling your sales ability, and you're providing them, I guess, a confidence in you that, you're going to be the guy that sells this house. You're going to execute this for them. So one other thing I'd like to elaborate on in getting a listing, because that's the most important thing to me. I've always focused on get listings, because I can work with the buyer and I could show them 40 houses until they finally decide to write an offer. Then they might not even get that accepted.
Right.
So you're going to put in a lot of the hours and the churning and burning as a buyer's agent versus a listing agent is gold. You get the listing, you do the work that it takes to list the property, and then you market and sell it. That's where you want to be in this environment. So Exit has this great formula where if you identify somebody that is interested in selling their home, the first step that you do is that you find out a little bit about them and where it's located, details about that house, and then you are going to put together a pre-marketing package. It's like a 25, 30-page document printed in color and emailed if they want it that way. You're going to go out of your way, put that together. It's going to give them details about how to prepare to sell the house, how to clean, how to stage it, and all these things. A bio about you, your other transactions, why you believe that you're a good agent. You're going to go drop that packet off before you even meet with them. And what that does is it just sets an amazing perspective about yourself to that person. It's like, wow, this person is so prepared and so dedicated to what they're doing. So just little things like that as a listing agent can go so far. You're going to do that. Then you're going to actually meet with them, see the real estate that's there, the physical property, and evaluate that. But the exit formula is before you do anything, you're going to sit down in their kitchen, because where do people congregate when they know each other well? It's the kitchen. So you're going to sit down in their kitchen. You're going to get to know them a little bit, if you don't already personally know them.
Right.
But if this is like a stranger, right? So what's your story? Where do you work? And where have you worked? And how did you get this house? And what work have you done here? And you kind of get to know them and their family first, because it shows that you're human and you care about these people, and it's not just a transaction to you. So you've already shown your professionalism by delivering this packet with all this helpful information, which, just to clarify, does not include any information about the value, just information about selling your home. Then you meet and you take the time to understand these people and meet these people. And in doing so, you kind of start to understand their characteristics. You're reading this person and understanding how they operate and how they think. And then you're going to, evaluate the home and go around and take notes. And finally, after seeing the physical real estate, you can provide the market analysis that you did before and give them a price and what you think that home is worth. So all of that is a part of that process. Like I said, the buying side is more so just getting people out there, showing them the properties, boots on the ground. Let's go look at a bunch of real estate and let's find you something. But you can only control the inventory that's out there. You can't control that.
Right. Yeah, totally. All right, we'll wrap up this one. Stick around for part 2. We'll talk about investing, and shout out to Brad's dad's best friend's mom.
Yeah, I want to throw in maybe one more thing before we wrap it up.
Please go for it.
So we talked about commissions and how those are broken down. We talked about the organization of all these people that are important in the process and how you learn from other agents. But I was going to give you just a glimpse of some of the transactions I actually did and how those unfolded. And it kind of goes back to my advice to somebody starting out, not to be daunting, but just to expect the worst and expect to learn and grow. So that first year, Century 21 recap, no deals. The second year, I started to do all this learning, and I really spent the year learning. But I did have 2 of those meetings to list a house. One of them I ended up listing, and it wasn't in necessarily the greatest area. It was in Milwaukee, and the seller was a landlord. He decided once we had listed it that he really didn't want to sell it, and he kind of backed out. Another one, I did the whole meeting, and they didn't agree with my price. I offered to list it at their price, which was about $75,000 more than what we recommended. Ooh. And they said no. And eventually they said they were going to do it on their own. They didn't. Come to find out a couple months later, they listed it with a different agent at my exact price, and they sold it in 3 days.
Okay.
So that lesson was more so of control what you can control. You can't make somebody work with you. They might not necessarily listen to you, and that's okay. Don't get caught up in the failure. Just learn something from it. So that first year with Exit was all learning, and I was doing what I was supposed to do, making the calls, sending that mail out, sending those emails out, and all of that just loads up like a slingshot, and it just gets launched. So going into 2023, I got my first listing, which was in Muskego, through a family friend. And that one was great. And it taught me kind of like, this is the real deal. This is what it's actually like to do this. So, but there's many hurdles along the way. I mean, they had an inspection. I held my first open house. Only one person showed up to the open house, and that was the person who bought the house.
Wow.
So that shows you that just put in the time, do the open houses, market the home, get it out there on social media. And if you do so, you're going to find that buyer. And, you don't have, it only takes one. You don't need 100 people to show up to that open house to sell that house.
Right. Totally. Thanks for sharing that experience. That's super interesting. Yeah, you just need one person for a lot of deals. The one
you
good
can only
thing.
sell it to one person.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's 10 people, 100 people, or one person. So what I learned from that one is like, wow, this is really from start to finish, all the stuff that goes into it and that whole closing process that I was talking about. So that was a huge learning lesson on that. We ended up, the sellers had to redo the roof because it didn't pass the inspection. So that was another thing where you have to go to your seller and say, unfortunately, I'm going to ask you to spend $15,000 to redo your roof. It's a tough conversation to have. So it just propels from there. You do a transaction, you do a great job, you get a review from them, and then you blast it on social media so that people see, I successfully helped these people sell their home. And then after that, you're continuing on doing your touches, and it just kind of goes like a roller coaster cresting the hill. So then the next one was only a month later. And that was a lawn care client, and that was a very, very complex transaction. It didn't have to be, but it just was because of the buying side was just very belligerent with what they asked for and asking for certain things that weren't standard. And I mean, that's a crazy story. We got to the closing table. Everything was supposed to be a done deal. The buyer was coming up from Chicago, and the buyer was refusing to sign the documents unless we gave her a credit to remove some moss on the roof, which, like I alluded to earlier, that whole window expired. It's way past that.
Yeah.
She was refusing to sign it. So then the sellers were going to write her a check, and they're like, screw this. It's $300. This lady's crazy. Let's just get this done with. So they wrote her a check. She wouldn't accept the check. She said, I don't believe that it could be a fraudulent check. I want cash. So my sellers literally left the closing table, went to the local bank, pulled out $300. And then I drafted up this little thing that said everybody in the room witnessed that she got her $300, gave her the $300. She signed the paperwork and disappeared to Chicago.
Really?
It's just crazy. Like the amount of different challenges that came from each transaction. So that was 2 successfully closed. And I got a feeling for like, wow, this is really awesome. You spend 30 days selling this property and you get a check for thousands of dollars. It's life-changing. It makes all of that work worth it. And it really shows you like, wow, this is the real estate world.
Yeah.
Like collecting commissions is awesome. So those were the first 2. The third one was another super hard one. It was a home that had failed to sell twice. It had a lot of issues. It was a seller that was elderly and falling behind on the maintenance of it. That transaction never closed. I did an amazing job marketing it. I did so much work. Actually, I even fixed things around the house. I cut open some drywall to expose a pipe that was leaking so that I could outright in advance disclose, like, here are the things I know about. We're selling this house as is, as reflected by the price, and here's what's wrong. So just did an excellent job showing them, here are the problems. We're telling you openly, we're not hiding any of these problems, thus the price is reflected. And we got, it was crazy. It was a spring market. We had like 65 showings, cars lined up and down the road. Just people everywhere looking at this house. Just snow. I think it was snowy a little bit at the time. Snow all over the house.
Yeah.
Just hundreds of people in the house. Just the real estate market was buzzing. And got one offer that was over full price. And, come to find out there were just so many challenges with that property in the state that it was in, and money owed. And we were unable to close that transaction due to financial complications from the seller. So that was my third one. I got paid to acknowledge that deal. I didn't get that check but I got paid in knowledge. So then it's still another way to market yourself. It's another Facebook post. I sold this, I got an accepted offer on this house. I didn't sell it, but I got an accepted offer. It just starts to keep going. Did one in the city in the summer, which was just beautifully done. No problems with it, all updated. We had something like, once again, 100 showings. I sat on the phone for 2 days just answering phone calls. I couldn't leave the phone. I was answering texts and phone calls, and you almost couldn't keep up to it.
Yeah.
We received multiple offers on that. A lot of them over asking price, closed on that one. Literally no contingencies. So like the moment we got the offer, we knew it was going to close. That is probably the only easy transaction I've ever done. So did that one. The next one was my big one out in Germantown that I handled both sides of the transaction. And all throughout the year, the market's changing. So like, that was all busy. Then it started to slow down again as rates came up. So this one, we only had 2 interested parties. One of them I ended up finding myself because they wrote a letter. It's crazy how that works. So represented that whole one. Thought that was going to be another perfect one, and even had complications with that. And the seller had a dehumidifier, was running like crazy. It was August, and it leaked, and it ruined a portion of the floor. So this is where, as a realtor, you tap into your network and you find somebody. You're a problem solver. I'm going to find someone to solve this problem. You tell them that confidently, and then you do it. So we found a guy, came in, took the floor apart, cut new pieces of that laminate flooring, laid them back in, and put it all back together. Amazing.
Yeah.
Saves the deal. So, and then the last 2 of the year were one up on the Mississippi River house that's looking over the river, and the sellers were selling this property, and they had another property in the area. So just kind of pulling their equity out, moving on to their farm.
Okay.
So pretty good one there. And then I helped it all comes full circle. Helped Brad purchase his first condo.
Brad's dad?
No, not Brad's dad this time, but Brad. That Brad.
Yeah.
Purchased his first condo. So Brad's dad's best friend's wife got me at Exit. And a year later, or 2 years later, I helped Brad's son buy his first condo.
That's insane.
That's insane how it works.
Yeah.
So all along the line, my sponsor, this woman that promoted me to Exit and did so much in my growth to get me here, and is responsible for the reason why I started my successful journey in real estate, has been collecting the 10% off of every transaction. So for me, that feels so good, because she pointed me in the right direction and got me the help and learning and the growth I need for me to personally succeed. And then she also gets compensation for that too, which doesn't come out of my pocket, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the full circle of the transactions I did this year. 6 listings sold, 1 buyer, had multiple things fall through, but that's all right. It's going to happen to everybody, and it's what you learn from it. So I think that's a pretty good overview of real estate, being an agent, what goes into it, how your deals are going to go. But the real main focus is you just have to make the connections you need to do, and then you need to put in the effort and the work, and then everything will kind of the train will start to run.
Totally. Thanks for sharing your journey. It's very interesting. And
we
learned a lot through your experiences and through all your knowledge that you've learned throughout your journey in the real estate world.
Yeah. I mean, you learn something every deal. And that's why the brokers and the people that have done hundreds of transactions, they still encounter new things. So it's a very cool world where it's always new. There's always a new challenge, and there's always a new thing to be learned. So it's an ever-evolving business. The laws are always changing. It's just a great business to get your hands on. So in a future episode, we'll get back together, Hunter, and we'll cover the investment side of real estate, a side that a lot of agents miss out on because they're so programmed to just doing deals and collecting commissions, but really they're missing the biggest opportunity in real estate, and holding that license can be to personally engage in purchasing real estate and the rental world and what all that can do to change your life. So yeah, all in all, find your mentors, do the work that pertains and make the touches and put in the effort. And that's how you become a successful real estate agent, as long as you're evolving and willing to learn. But as we'll cover in a future visit, think about the power of the real estate in itself and use your license not only to help other people, but to help yourself too.
Awesome. Can't wait for that discussion. And thanks for coming on again, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Hunter.
Awesome.
It's a blessing being on your channel. We'll see you next time.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
Dude, Brad's dad's mom.